would like to invite Tanya from Action for Canada up here. This group of people have been working tirelessly over the past year and some to make changes. They're doing lawsuits. They're paired up with Rocco Galati. They're actually have a lawsuit going against Bonnie Henry. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to Tanya.
Hello. Wow, what a great crowd. It is so good to be here. Those of you who know me and those who don't, you're going to learn what I start with. And that is that I'm going to thank God and God alone for the land that I'm standing on. So, yes, let's talk about the legal action. We're going to be commencing very, very shortly. Rocco has been working on the statement of claim, and we had it so-called done a week ago, but then something came up that we thought was very important to include in that. And it involves some children. Children who are struggling through this unlike any other children, not that all of them already aren't, but as those who are struggling with disabilities, particularly autism, where the government has no qualms about demanding that masks go on the workers that work with these children, or these children as well are being mandated to wear these masks. It is cruel and unusual punishment. The fact that children and youth do not contract nor transmit this virus should be enough to know something terribly wrong is going on in our society. That the government, the BCTF for instance, the union, the head of the union, is wanting to create a mask culture in our schools. To mask our children, social distance them, hand sanitizers is absolutely despicable. If you see the images of the faces that have rashes on them, the burns on their hands, where are the parents? They are counting on us as adults to be advocates for them. And we are standing back and watching this abuse happen because we're too afraid of what other parents may think. We're too afraid of a non-existent pandemic. We have lost our ability to think critically. And I have been saying lately that there's this little ember that was burning inside of people a year ago. But they capitulated very quickly to the government because they'd been conditioned for decades to do so. But now what we want to do is we want to spark a fire. And that fire is going to come with truth. And the truth is that if you're actually listening to Bonnie Henry on her weekly, daily updates, you'll see that she's actually telling you how many deaths there are in BC. So for instance, a couple of weeks ago, Bonnie Henry had shut down essential travel. And then about a week later, Bonnie Henry decided to cancel 1,750 surgeries because there was 400 people who had ended up in the hospital. Then in the article, it carries on to say there's been 1,550 deaths since the onset of COVID. That's 16 months in a province with 5.1 million people. So where the common sense, the critical thinking, and the little spark needs to ignite, get out your calculators and take 1,550 people and divide it by 5.1 million. It is 0.0003% death rate. This is not a pandemic. Are people getting a virus, a respiratory illness? Yes, like they do every influenza season. Is this virus from the onset treatable? Yes. Has the government prohibited the treatment from being used? Yes. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, certain inhaler puffers for asthma have all been effective, but they have prohibited it. And now I want to get to the foundation of this nation. It is a Judeo-Christian nation, and we inherited it through our British Commonwealth based on biblical principles. It is embedded in our Magna Carta, and it forms our laws and our values, and is a system of governance that sets us apart from totalitarian, extremist, and communist regimes, giving you the freedom to believe or not to believe without fear, of persecution, oppression, and even death. And I want you to let this resonate, because Justin Trudeau, his father, he said he's going to finish what his dad had begun, and that was to force us into a communist nation, or one with no core identity. They started out by saying we're no longer a Christian nation, we're a secular nation. Then we were a multicultural nation. And then when Justin Trudeau came in, he said we're a nation with no core identity. And that's an impossibility, and you bet he's working overtime to fill it with something, and that's communism. And how you do that is you move towards socialism and communism by impoverishing a nation, right? In order for everybody to be, what? Reliant on the government. Where are we at with COVID-19? We've got millions of Canadians out of work right now, not knowing if they can pay their rent or their mortgage. And yet the media and the government have everybody focused on 0.03% of the population who are at risk every year, while the rest are just collateral damage. So when people say I'm wearing a mask for somebody else, I say, are you really? Are you wearing it for the millions of Canadians out of work right now? Are you wearing it for the abuse of our kids and what they're undergoing in the school systems? A 31% increase in mental health emergency hospitalizations of our youth. Our youth are now at the highest ideation of suicide. Are you doing it for our elderly who are being treated worse than prisoners, being isolated? Have we asked them what they want? And knowing that there's a treatment for this virus, isn't this all the more criminal? Bonnie Henry needs to go to jail. And we need to stick John Horgan right next to her. A year ago, when, whether you know it or not, the government passed something called Bill 19. And I was dealing with constitutional lawyers at the time, and I sent it to her, and I said, holy smokes, take a look at this. She got back to me and said, that is the most draconian legislation I've ever seen, and you got to fight it. And so when I saw this, and she said somebody needs to take action, I was like, well, that's not really what we're into, but this looks pretty serious. So I started talking to a couple of lawyers, and ultimately I had a conversation with Rocco Galati, and I knew right away he was the man for the job. So on September 13th at a rally, second time speaking at a rally, I took a leap of faith and I announced to people, we are going to be taking legal action against the BC and federal government. And I said, but we cannot do this without you. I showed up that day with no money. I'd spent a couple of months trying to reach out. I didn't know anybody, you know, I certainly didn't know anybody with that kind of money to help me out. And anyways, for any of you that saw the video, it was an incredibly special day that I will remember for the rest of my life. There was a fellow behind me waving some cash as I says, but we can't do this without you. And that started a flood of giving unlike anything I ever had seen before. And people just started coming up. They were talking about passing a hat, and it went, start passing a box. And I came home with nearly $14,000 that day in cash. And I tell you, I was tear-filled, because that wasn't just about the cash. It showed me the heart of the people, that there were finally people who were waking up and understanding that we're in a crisis in Canada. And this is a moment in time that we are at a fork in the road, that we're either going to fall to communism or we're going to rise up to our freedom and become a patriotic country again. And I must say, growing up, I was brought up in a Christian home. I love Canada. My parents came out of the war from the Netherlands and England. And so I always had a deep respect for our freedoms, but I didn't know to what degree. It wasn't like in the States, you know, where you see that patriotism, and I thought, where is that in Canada? Well, they were wishy-washing everything out of us by telling us we're multicultural, by telling us we're this or that. And you know, if you're at odds with the comment that I had made earlier about us being a multicultural nation and, you know, the risks that we're taking right now by not respecting the fact that our foundation truly is on Christian principles and how that does set us apart. And the challenge is, in saying that, would you want to live in one of the 57 Muslim majority countries? There are incredible people living in those countries that are living under oppression. They don't have the freedom that we've had in Canada. How about communist China? Pakistan, North Korea. When I started to think about this, I thought, you know, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else but a Western nation that was actually built on Christian principles, because that's the way our system of governance goes, right? That gives you the freedom and the democracy that you have today. Is this something that we could create a wave of patriotism in this country? Are you ready? Thank you. So please get involved. We cannot sit back and think that somebody else is going to take care of this anymore. It is a huge battle that we're in. This is a war. I'm just so grateful to be here in Kamloops. It's wonderful to see this crowd of people exercising their freedoms, and I love it.
So very much.